prevention. And I think it really has to start with the people who are buying technology. They have to sit up and say, I'm not going to buy it unless I know what was the security thinking that went into this technology, what is the security design, who reviewed it. You know, those people, those security researchers, those people exist, right? They're reviewing this stuff after it's been deployed. Why aren't those things pointed out during the design phase of the technology before it gets sold? This is not a new idea. People say, you know, build security in, right? Build security into your software. Do threat modeling, do design modeling. You know, and there are companies that do it. There are companies that hire those researchers. Companies like Microsoft are doing it, right? Works on some of the new stuff. It doesn't really work if it has to be backwards compatible. There's a huge legacy code base. There's still lots of problems. But there's a huge amount of technology out there which is being built with no one doing design reviews over it before it's built. And that's really what has to stop. And it has to stop with customers saying, I want evidence that this was done with this technology before I do it. Now, I don't think, you know, individual consumers are going to be able to, you know, send an email to Steve Jobs and say, you know, can you tell me about the iPhone and, you know, what was the threat model and, you know, tell me about Safari a little bit, how was that written? It's not going to happen. But big enterprises can do it. Governments can do it. You know, there are companies that are bigger, maybe not bigger than Apple, but there are certainly companies that are bigger than, you know, an Adobe or a McAfee. So I think builders are going to have to start to demonstrate what they've done to secure their systems. We're just going to get, or we're just stuck. We're just stuck in this rut, right? The stuff getting deployed, and then the researchers take a crack at it. But I still don't think that's the only solution. You know, we're not going to ship things that are defect-free with absolutely perfect designs. That's not going to happen. We can do a lot better, but it's not going to be perfect. So there's always going to have to be some reaction. But I think that needs to be built into the system, and it needs to be thought of in the building of the system. So we're starting to see this with, you know, things like auto updates with certain kinds of software. But there's still a huge amount of hardware, operating systems, servers, software, client software that really has no notion of this reactive model. So I think the rapid defect remediation, needs to be built into any new systems coming. And I think this is where the cloud has its most potential. There's obviously a lot of security risks for the cloud also. But one of the huge benefits of the cloud is this idea that you can learn about a defect and fix it for everyone all at once. You know, when Google finds out about a Gmail vulnerability, you know, they can even be monitoring the behavior that's happening. They can monitor, see the attack, monitor for anomalous behavior, and fix it before anyone even knows about it. You know, that's pretty cool. You can't do that with your Wi-Fi access point. It's not going to happen. So I think that, you know, this is something that, as, you know, security architects and designers, we need to think about. So I think the alternatives to not, you know, doing it right the first time or having built-in rapid defect remediation is going to be this perpetual state of insecurity that we have. So that's my presentation. Any questions or comments? Let me just put my this is my Twitter follow me out there.
Hi. I have a couple of points I wanted to pick you up on. One is that I really believe that you aren't describing anything different than a reactive security model when you talk about rapid remediation, so how is that better than what we have? The second point is that you were talking earlier about updates to antivirus or other reactive technologies, and you've ignored the fact that in your example, for instance, you say you're going to be 333 variants behind. You've ignored the fact that actually you might well, as an antivirus researcher, have built a generic signature which detects those proactively, so that the next few variants that come out are actually already covered. So to say that it's an entirely reactive model shows a kind of fundamental misunderstanding of what it does, but that's not uncommon. So those are the points I'd like to make.
Sure. So I think when I talk about it's still a reactive model, like the Gmail example, and I certainly admit that, but I think it's a reactive model that's very difficult for an attacker to get inside the OODA loop of that reactive model, because it's happening so quickly, on the order of perhaps less than a day. Hopefully, I think we can get to, but I'm not saying it's perfect. But reactive models that take years exist out there, and that's totally ridiculous. David Litchfield tweeted today that he hasn't touched Oracle server in 2 years, and they just credited him in a patch that came out yesterday. So obviously that's a really bad. So it's the time domain of the reactive model that's the important part. On the antivirus front, you're obviously right. It's not black and white. There can be signatures that can find multiple variants. So you're right.
Any other questions? Nobody? Chris, I would like to thank you very much for your presentation. In a moment, we're going to set up the next keynote. The next keynote will be Paul Vixie, who'll take you back to the end. In the meanwhile, I would like to tell you a little bit about other activities over here at Hacking.